Under a bruised sky bleeding violet over the Arizona desert, the wind carried the scent of sage and memory. It whispered through the canyons as if it remembered every promise, every betrayal, every prayer lost to sand. That was the night Elias Kane, 30, weary, and done with wandering, found her. He was riding through Dead Mesa, a valley so wide it could swallow a man's thoughts. The sun was bleeding behind red cliffs, and Bramble, his horse, limped from exhaustion. Elias had been traveling for days, chasing nothing, maybe peace, maybe forgetfulness. Then he heard it, faint as a ghost, a sound that might have been wind or a song born from thirst. He followed it until he saw her. Ayanna, 20, was tied to a pine at the edge of the wash. Her dark hair tangled with dust and feathers, her wrists bruised by rope. Yet her face, calm, almost otherworldly, didn't belong to the desert. Her eyes, black and endless, lifted toward him without fear. "Don't leave me," she whispered, voice cracked but steady. "I'll give you a life you never expected." The word struck him. There was no plea, only certainty. He scanned the cliffs, searching for whoever had done this, but there was no one, only her, the rope, and the silent land. He dismounted. The rope burned his palms as he freed her hands. She didn't cry or thank him, only looked at him as if she had been waiting. Elias lifted her onto his horse and turned toward Hollow Creek. The wind cooled the sweat on his neck. She said nothing for miles. When he finally asked her name, she said, "Ayanna." Then her head rested against his chest, trusting him completely, as though trust was a language he had long forgotten. Hollow Creek never welcomed strangers. As they rode into town at dusk, windows shuttered one by one. Men outside the saloon stopped playing cards. The church bell rang, slow and deliberate. Sheriff Colt McGra, a wide man with eyes like cold iron, waited in the street. "You know what she is, Kane." "She's someone who needed help," Elias said. "That ain't what I meant." Elias said nothing. Ayanna looked at the sheriff without lowering her gaze. The silence stretched, brittle and dangerous. Elias nudged Bramble forward, passing the saloon, the blacksmith's shop, the church. Faces pressed to windows. A woman's voice hissed, "The giant's lost his mind." At the edge of town, night fell. Elias led Ayanna to his cabin, a small place built from cedar and loneliness. Inside, he lit a fire. She sat near it, her posture straight despite exhaustion. He offered her bread and coffee. She refused at first, pride stiff in her hunger, then slowly took it. Each bite seemed to cost her something. Outside, thunder rolled across the mesa. Rain began to fall, soft, rare, deliberate. Elias listened, feeling something he hadn't in years, peace. Ayanna began to hum, low and mournful. "What's that song?" he asked. "It's for the ones who are gone," she said. "And for those still searching." He didn't ask which she thought he was. He already knew. By morning, Hollow Creek was buzzing. Mabel Dunn at the general store heard it first. By noon, everyone knew, the giant cowboy had brought home an Apache girl. "Witchcraft," said one. "She'll curse his land," said another. "He's bewitched," murmured a third. When Sheriff McGra rode up to the cabin, Elias was chopping wood. "You can't keep her here," the sheriff said. "She don't belong." "Neither do I." McGra studied him, rain dripping from his hat brim. "Then maybe you both ought to move on." "I'm done moving." The sheriff sighed. "This town's made of tinder, Kane. Don't strike a spark you can't put out." That night, Elias loaded his rifle, not from anger, but because the sound of it ready made him feel less helpless. Ayanna watched from the window. "You think they'll come?" "They might. If they do, we'll face them." She smiled faintly. "You're not as lost as you think." 3 days later, the town gathered. The sheriff stood in front, his badge dull in the sun. The preacher held a trembling Bible. Men came armed, women stood behind them, faces drawn with judgment. Elias stepped from the cabin, a tall shadow across the dust. Ayanna followed barefoot, her hair braided with wildflowers. They stood side by side. "You call her savage," Elias said, his voice steady. "But she's the only one among us who's free." The crowd murmured uneasily. "She's my wife." The words cracked like thunder. The preacher opened his mouth, but Elias was already kneeling. "Ayanna," he said softly, "will you stay with me as long as the earth has breath?" Her eyes gleamed like black glass. "Yes." The preacher, trembling, whispered the words of union. The vows hung in the air like something eternal. Then, from the back, a fiddler began to play, a slow, aching tune. Elias took Ayanna's hand, and they danced in the dirt. His steps were awkward, hers flowed like water. The crowd watched in silence, faces softening, the music stirring something older than hate. When the song ended, they kissed, quietly, reverently. For the first time, Elias felt the weight of his wandering lift. But love in the West never came without a price. That night, a glow rose on the horizon. The cabin's windows flickered with reflected fire. Elias woke to shattering glass, a rock rolled across the floor, still burning. He ran outside, shouting into the flames, "Stop! You'll kill us both." Figures moved in the dark, faces hidden by light. "She's bewitched you," one cried. Ayanna stepped beside him, eyes fierce. "Don't fight them," she said. "Stand." And they did. The fire roared higher, a living thing. Flames clawed at the porch. Then came the sheriff's voice, "Enough." McGra pushed through the mob, revolver drawn but aimed at no one. He looked from Elias to Ayanna. "Let them be." The men hesitated. The torches lowered. The wind rose, fierce and cool. Ash swirled like snow, and the fire began to die. By dawn, smoke curled gently from the blackened porch. The cabin still stood. The air smelled of cedar and rain. Mabel Dunn came with bread, eyes red from crying. "They won't bother you again," she said. The sheriff saw to that. Ayanna nodded. "Then the land can breathe again." Children from the town left flowers by the fence. Even the preacher came, leaving a silver cross at the door. Hollow Creek had seen something it could never unsee, love standing unarmed against hate. Elias and Ayanna sat together on the porch as the sun lifted over the mesas. His arm rested around her shoulders. "You were right," he said. "You gave me a life I never expected." Ayanna smiled faintly. "It was already waiting for you. You just needed to stop running." The desert glowed gold and endless. For the first time, the silence between them wasn't empty, it was full of everything they had endured, and everything still to come. Years later, when travelers stopped by Mabel's store, she'd tell the story the same way. "Some tales ain't born of gunfire or gold," she'd say, gazing toward the far ridge. "Some are born when a man's heart, tired of dust, finally meets mercy." Then she'd pause, eyes soft with memory. "And if you listen close enough," she'd whisper, "you can still hear them dancing."